This second section of the morning, the integration of habitat restoration and fisheries enhancement, is going to be chaired by Lisa Hulette. And Lisa, are you going to come and join me up here? Please do, otherwise I'll feel lonely up here.
No one should feel lonely up there.
Lisa is a person who is well known to us in Sonoma County for her energetic and very successful leadership in the Gold Ridge RCD, but she moved on. Her work has been acknowledged, and now she's going to lead this session from her position as a project director in the California Salmon Initiative.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Thank you. So I do have a presentation. So, as I was developing my presentation, I was thinking to myself, I've been working in salmon restoration for 20 years now. So since I was 5, I've been working on salmon. and it's really quite amazing. When I first started, it was the timber wars, the timber companies. We were at odds with them, and what was happening in these timber watersheds to our salmon. And then bond money came, and it was about opportunity. Where could we get projects going? There was lots of money flowing. And now, where money is tight and governments are shutting down and bonds are becoming increasingly hard to pass, it's become more and more evident that we really need to, as a lot of the speakers have alluded to, band together and really strategically focus our work so that we are using resources in the most efficient manner possible. And that means making some hard decisions about where we're going to do projects and where we're seeing returns. So as Jake mentioned, I used to work at the Gold Ridge Resource Conservation District, and I'm so proud of that work because we did a lot of really unique, amazing things that they're still carrying on today. And now at my work at the Nature Conservancy, I'm able to take those lessons that I've learned and turn them into more of a regional perspective and have far-reaching impacts. And I want to talk a little bit about that. And I also want to talk about how working for the world's largest nonprofit, not to fill up the room with that word, but how you can really move things forward with the power of resources and cooperation and working together. Next slide. So a little bit about the California Salmon Initiative, which I lead for the Nature Conservancy. The situation that we have, for salmon, it's going to, I'm going to go over this really quickly. Everyone kind of knows, salmon are hurting puppies in California, but, all is not lost. There is optimism. There are places where things are turning around, and I think it's time to breathe a note of optimism into what has been kind of this doom and gloom perception. And then I want to talk also about money. So a lot has been said about economics, and there's been a lot of money spent on salmon. I'm going to show some work we've done in-house. $250 million in salmon restoration over the last decade. That's some weighty money. And I don't know that we're going to see that money in the next decade. So once again, strategically focusing our work to those places where we have the best chance of seeing recovery. And I'm focusing on salmon, so not drinking water, not other things, but specifically salmon. So a lot of people think of the Nature Conservancy as this mega land trust, but really we've evolved to a place where we're trying to tackle big environmental challenges because owning land, especially in California, is difficult and it's expensive, and it may not be the best way in these challenging times to face these environmental problems. So in California, we have 6 priority initiatives: freshwater, migratory birds, marine fisheries, renewable energy, climate change, and salmon. So these are the big environmental challenges that the Nature Conservancy is putting significant resources to in order to affect change, not only in California, not only in the United States, but internationally. And so I'm going to talk about the Salmon Initiative. So, go over this. Salmon need messy, wild places to thrive, and this is what they need, and this is not what they have. So, as I was saying, when I first started my career, logging practices, it was a legacy. It wasn't just those loggers in the 80s. It was a whole century of poor logging practices that got to the salmon or the rivers to the place where they are now, that they're impacting salmon. Go on. And, water use, huge issue in rural communities. Talked about the Delta. Water is a driver in California, and, there needs to be solutions for people to conserve water. And I would say this is where the private landowners, we really need to empower them with solutions like rainwater catchment or water trusts, water transactions, water leasing. How do we get water in the stream at the right time? I think those are all really important things, and also allow landowners to operate their businesses. That, the two are not mutually exclusive and shouldn't be. And estuaries. If we're looking at the headwaters to the river mouth, knowing that, affecting the ocean is kind of difficult, it's big. The estuary is the place where if salmon are gonna survive, the estuary is the place where they need to fatten up and get prepared for the big challenge of the ocean. And we have assessment, TNC has done a California assessment of estuaries. Our estuaries are all messed up. Okay, they're beautiful places. We love to put houses there. They're great for many things. And I would say we still need to be able to view those places, visit those places, but there's some restoration work that needs to happen. So salmon, other aquatic creatures can also inhabit those places so they get nice and fat, so when they go out to the ocean, they're ready for, the challenges that wait them out there. So I'm going to use a couple of our project examples to show how the Nature Conservancy is looking at putting resources in place and then scaling that up so it has broader implication to other places. At the Garcia River Forest, we used, large wood augmentation, not the typical large woody debris, static, bolt it to the tree sort of thing, but where loggers, would directly fall trees into the stream to create kind of a natural system, and then Mother Nature could decide where those trees should be placed. This works great on timberlands. Trout Unlimited kind of pioneered this in Mendocino. I know others are also doing this. But what we did is when we did this project with the Conservation Fund, and we were able to do it on a large scale because together with the Conservation Fund, we have an easement over 1/3 of the entire watershed. So we were able to affect a big area and but it wasn't just the restoration technique. So we can go on. What emerged was this crazy permitting scheme, and this isn't meant to be read or understood. It's just, we mapped out, say a landowner, a timber company, who are now, if we're going to save salmon, we need to work with the timber companies. So say a timber company wanted to do a large wood project. We, mapped out what they would have to do. So that's kind of the permitting scheme that someone would have to walk through in order to do a project to benefit the environment. So the very regulations that were put in place to protect the environment are now getting in the way of effective restoration. And so somewhere there needed to be a fix in order to change that, because we're not talking about dredging streams or development. We're talking about emergency actions that need to happen in order to get projects in place to save salmon, which are going to disappear in our lifetime if we're not careful. I mean, that's a pretty big thing. An iconic species like a salmon could disappear within our lifetime. That's unacceptable. So the Nature Conservancy worked with Trout Unlimited and California Trout, and then Assemblymember Huffman, now Congressman Huffman's office, to develop AB 1961, the Coho Help Act, to help streamline one of the permits for a certain suite of projects, and that was the 1600 permit, and the projects are large wood, riparian revegetation, and some barriers. And we still continue to work with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, you know, to ensure that that legislation moves to the ground as effectively as possible. But you know, from start to finish, that legislation, it took a year. So that's the power of working together, that we can affect change. And I have 5 minutes, so I'm going to run through this. So we have a project at Shasta Big Springs Ranch where we're dedicating water and stream, and we're figuring out a way to change the Section 1707 code to make it easier for landowners to dedicate water and stream. Go on. And then at the 10 Mile River, we're learning how to restore a very important estuary to give fish a better chance at survival. And keep going. And this is what I really want to get to after this. So demonstrating local impact, our amplification mechanism is a policy change, and then using scientific analysis to find where you can have that broader regional impact. I would really recommend people look at that beyond your place. Where can you scale up? Where can you have bigger impact? Because that's how we're going to see change. And then I don't want to go through all of this, but this is kind of the scheme we use. But I would say, you know, have we created lots more fish? And we can, maybe not. And we go on. But so just look at this. We've never recovered a fish species. That's pretty. There's been, in some of the cases where there have been recovery, there's been a smoking gun like DDT or some other thing. And I would say we need to find that smoking gun for salmon because time's running out. Go on. And we can move on from this too. So what I want to talk about really briefly, because I only have 2 minutes, I think, is how much money has been spent on salmon restoration and how does that translate to the number of jobs. So a bunch of money has been spent. You can look at this. So we have created, through a restoration economy, you know, about over the past decade, 9,000 to 16,000 jobs. That's significant. Those are new FTEs through either primary or secondary funding, and that cannot be ignored by the local communities, by the local representatives, state and federal. And, you know, I would say our work is not done. You know, green jobs have, you know, green sort of jobs create more jobs than traditional gray jobs. We can go on. And this is kind of where the money has been spent. So I can go over this later with you offline when I have more time. But really, Sonoma and Humboldt in primary grant funding have seen a lot of this work because that's where a lot of fisheries restoration work has happened. So that's not surprising. And, you know, the second thing is, you know, how many salmon come back to spawn in our streams each year? That was the second thing. Where are we seeing those returns? And since I'm running out of time, I would just say go to the website that TNC created along with 80 of our partners. We had 80 organizations throughout the state participating with us voluntarily. That's huge. So I would ask everyone to go to the website and see where our salmon population data is. We've collected the most monumental amount of data ever and put it in one site so you could see where salmon trends are increasing and the type of work that has been done. And so how do we rise to the calling to recover salmon? I would say you look at your project and you share the work with others. You know, now is the time to strategically focus our work with limited funds. We need to work in those places, I would say, and this is probably going to be a little, you know, not everyone's going to agree with me, but that's normal. We need to work in those places where salmon have the best chance of recovery. We can't spread our money out thin. If our goal is to recover salmon, then we need to work in those places where we can target that funding the best. If our goal is to create jobs, that's great. But I think it needs to be very clearly stated what our goal is in terms of using public and private funding. So thank you very much, and I'll take any questions later, or we can have the rest of our panel come up now.